The mixing with mic mixing tip is setting up headphones for mixing with the RedLine monitor. So I know a lot of you guys have, because I've made recommendations, and if you've watched, I have the RedLine monitor, and the RedLine monitor allows you to work with your mix in headphones. And the idea is, without emulating a room or an acoustic environment, what it does is it mixes in a little bit of the right side speaker into the left ear and a little bit of the left side speaker of your headphones into the right ear. So it cross feeds them with delay. And it also, so this creates a sort of phase distortion. And this is like a common, this is an exact characteristic of what happens with sound and creates the phantom imaging that gives us this visual, if you will, or the sonically it sounds like something is coming from between the speakers if we feed the exact same signal both to the left and to the right. So the idea then is that it's called like a comb filtering effect, where certain frequencies get canceled out, others get accentuated. And then what you get is this imaging in the middle. And if you move your head to the left or to the right, then what will end up happening is that image will kind of move with you. Because as you get closer to one speaker, you get farther away from the other. And then this thing called precedence effect takes over, where you start to hear a little bit like the right speaker sooner than you hear the left speaker. Okay, so the image will follow you across. So that's with speakers. So what this does is it emulates the sense of speakers. And this is really great for a lot of people who have to mix. Maybe they mix late at night. You don't want to wake up neighbors, their wives or boyfriends or whatever, girlfriends, family, friends, or whatever people they live with. So they can't be working with speakers, maybe late at night or during the day. So they work with headphones. And so what this does is it helps to emulate that. So what I wanted to do is kind of go over like a basic starting place to set up. And what I usually do is set up something where I'm placing in a session some music that I really know. Okay, so it was like a really good mix, something that I'm really into. And then what I'll do here is I'm going to bring this output level down here for a second, because I think that's like a little bit high, get a little clipping there. And what I do is I generally start with a setting here of like around 75. And I'm going to leave the center image solid. And what I want to start with is the positioning of the distance. So if you actually put on headphones when you listen to this video, then what you'll do is you'll start to hear the effect, because this will be part of the broadcast feed for this. So what I do is I start and I want to listen, and I'm going to start by moving, and it gives you instructions here. I think I can shut that off somehow. To move this up and set a distance, how far away I want the speakers. And usually, if you just go by what they say, that's just the timing, that's just the math of it. But you have to kind of listen in your ears and find that setting where the sound feels like it's coming from in front of you, even though you're listening into the headphones. So when you turn this off, if you listen to the music, what you'll get is the sound like in your head, right? It'll sound like it's, whatever effects and things that you do, you'll get some depth perception from all of that. But essentially everything sounds like it's in the middle of your head. And what this will do is this will start to pull it forward. So at 0 meters, this is inside your head, just as you would normally hear. And now I'm going to start to pull it forward. And the farther away I pull it, the more phasiness that you kind of hear. So I'm going to pick that as a position. So this is like what it's like with and without. Now there is a bit of a gain issue, and this is like common here. We're going to get to the center imaging, and I'm going to explain what that's all about in a second. Now, what I've done is I've gone just by feeling like I want this to sound like it's coming from in front of me. And that's really important. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the width of the speakers, and then I'll go back and I'll make the center adjustment. So what happens is if you have a set of speakers and you triangulate the speakers, there will be like a certain angle that you will achieve. And ideally, what is always recommended is some form of an equilateral triangle where you're basically just inside one of the points of that equilateral triangle. So you are basically, your head is equally distant from the speakers as they are from each other. And that would be sort of a standard setup. Now, that doesn't always work because a lot of this is affected by the shape of the room that you're working in. And so you want to adjust accordingly. Okay, but what I want to do here is to start with this, and I have it set at 75, and I made my distance adjustment from here to kind of get this feeling of the sound coming in front, because it has to, with this setup, feel right. That's the most important thing. And like feel like it's in front of you. It doesn't matter what the number says, okay? The way that they tell you to set this up is they say set up your speakers and try to match the feeling of your speakers exactly as they are in the headphones, so that when you switch between the speakers and the headphones, you don't really get a big difference, okay? The difference is you're extracting the room environment or the acoustic environment from the whole situation. There are actually some newer plugins that are out that are really, really good at that, actually, that emulate acoustic environments and even allow you to do surround inside headphones entirely. So that's like a whole other thing, and we'll get to that in some videos later on. Now, what I want to go here now is the sound stage, and this is setting the separation, how far away the speakers are from each other. Now, one thing that happens is the closer, the tighter the angle here. So if I go to 30 degrees, that's 30 degrees basically from my head. Okay, that's kind of like, where do I want these in terms of the angle? So I believe that would be like 15 degrees from either side of my head if I was just looking straight ahead. And they can go as much as 90 degrees, right? So that'd be a 90-degree angle. So somewhere in there is the setting. Now, the closer the speakers get together, the stronger the center image becomes, and that's why they have this control. So if I put this like this, it's going to be more mono, and the kick and center bass and snare and center image stuff is going to be more pronounced. Whereas if I go 90, now you notice that kick bass snare is less pronounced. And that's where this comes in. So now what I want to do here is I want to listen. And I like one step before 90. So that's an 85-degree angle. I can actually type it in. I'm actually just going to go in a little bit more than that, to 80. And now I can adjust this. So what I'm going to do here is just bypass it first. Get a judge for the center strength. So what I'm listening for, because this is kind of a little bit of an odd one, because what happens here is when you actually listen, when it's bypassed, the signal will sound wider in the headphones because you're not getting the crossfeed, and then it kind of moves in front of you. So you have to be careful, but if you focus particularly on the center image, and the relative balance between the two, you want it to kind of more or less balance each other out. So if I was like at 30 degrees, I would probably be closer to 3 dB. Since I'm closer to 90, I'm probably going to be closer to 0. I'm just going to make a little adjustment, go to here to 1 dB. And that seems to be pretty good. That seems to really follow along where, the overall volume shifts slightly. And of course, obviously the imaging and the spread kind of shift slightly, but I'm kind of comparing that left, center, right balance without it versus the left, center, right balance with it. Now, it has to feel good and sound good when you do this, because otherwise what'll end up happening is that if you make the center too light, you'll end up over mixing your center image stuff. You'll push your kick, snare, and vocal louder than what you normally would, and then when you listen to your monitors, it will sound too loud. So if you're using speakers, you want to compare it and make sure that those two are the same. So when you go to your speakers, it's like, oh wow, everything's louder in the center. When you go to the headphones, it's not. You want to make sure that they're balanced with each other. That's why they ask you to match up the sound so that when you go back and forth, you're not like you put on the headphones and you pull everything back a dB. You put on the monitors, you pull everything up a dB. It's in the center. That's the basic idea. But once you get this set, now then you can start the process of mixing. And this kind of gives you, especially if you're working exclusively with headphones, then matching it up to the monitors is not really a big deal. Or if your acoustic environment is not ideal and you don't like the sound of your monitors as they're set up, then focus on making the headphones sounding as good as they can, and then do whatever you can with the speakers, because that's going to be the better reference for you in the bad acoustic environment. And so this is the basic way to set this up. And then once you kind of get this going, the one key thing you have to remember is that when you turn on the speakers, you have to turn this off. So some people actually set up a parallel bus, a parallel mix bus that feeds the headphone jack, and then another one which feeds the speakers. And that way, when you put on the headphones, this is always enabled through a separate stereo mix bus, and then your speakers are fed without it. Otherwise, you have to kind of remember to turn them on and off. So this is one of those that if you're working from that perspective, you turn the target mode on and you leave it on up in the corner so that you remember to turn it off when you switch to the speakers. Okay, anyway, there's a quick tip on balancing out your headphones or setting up your headphones with the RedLine monitor.